It's playoff, baby.
Playoffs.
Welcome back, guys, to the James and Dames show, where I am your host, Will James, and
I'm Josiah Adamas. We're Dames.
and just before we get started, I wanted to. There's a lot of news, but I wanted to start off with Nick Saban retiring, um, after what is it? You have six, or does he have nine national championships and
Yes, I think it's seven.
seven?
I think
I just
so.
know it was a lot. And I I'm gonna I'm gonna go out and say that he's probably the best college football coach of all time. Um, and I never thought I would actually see the day where Nick Saban was not the head coach of Alabama. I figured he'd go out with retirement, but it's hard to believe. But I think with it being the new year and with so many things, uh, we're seeing a lot of people retiring and a lot of people um, moving around. Like I feel like more than any other year, and beyond just football too. Just like I don't know if you've seen the YouTube landscape, but there are some big names just in the YouTube landscape that have actually announced retirement coming forth in the, even though it's only been like a week and a half, and it's like it's just it's crazy. But I wanted to shout out Nick Saban with his retirement, and I mean, good for him. He deserves it. He's done so much. As much as I hate Bama, I do love Nick Saban, and I feel like I'm going to actually miss him.
Yeah, I feel the same sentiment too, where as annoying as it was to see Alabama basically in the playoffs every year, like since I've started watching college football playoffs and everything, consistency. That's what he's known for, and the fact that he's won so many championships with Alabama and how he's, developed that program, it's like that's a huge chunk out of well, all of college football and just the football world in general, because he's like one of the greatest coaches of all time in regarding to college football. So
Speaking of coaches, holy shit, it's only been a week. Um, and in that week we've had uh the playoffs set. The big the big thing I was waiting for actually was more so actually, well, not until Saturday, was I didn't even know people had a name for it, but Black Monday, which is the Monday after the last game of the regular season, which is when all of the coaches get fired. And going into the going into the final week, we only had three firings, which was Frank Reich for the Panthers, Josh McDaniels from the Raiders, and Brandon Staley from the Chargers, which is all three were very fair. On Monday, we saw Arthur Smith get fired. Was not actually my favorite thing about this is he was fired as soon as it turned Monday, as in like it was like 12:01 Eastern time. They were like, "You're gone." He probably deserved that. Especially after the showing he put against the Saints, the chance for the division on the line. But that one we saw coming. I think I think we can say Rivera got fired the following day. I don't know about you, but then my opinion shit got out of hand because I was like, they just started firing everybody. It all started with Mike Vrabel.
Vrabel, I think in the situation, it was both parties needed to let go of each other. In a sense, it was hard to do so because you've had him for like a pretty decent tenure, and it was time to go on different paths, basically. I mean, yes, it's not a smart move, but it is the right move. I mean, because in order to like rebuild that culture, you kind of have to move on from him. But other than that, Vrabel is going to get a job somewhere else really easily. But he's got to fix some coaching tactics, though. So,
Yeah, I mean I thought he was a good coach. That's why I was so surprised. I was like, he's done so well. He had one bad year, and you look at the team, it's not surprising that he had one bad year. Um, but you know, I could see it. Like it's not my favorite. I thought he was one of the safer ones. If that's as surprising as it gets, with us, yeah, I have a good idea. I think I know where he's gonna go. The most surprising though was the Pete Carroll news. Uh, I've heard some people say he's not technically fired. They just transferred him
no.
to a different position, but he was he was fired. He's no longer the head coach. He lost that job regardless of the reasoning. And shit, we're getting rid of everyone. I'm interested who the Seahawks go after. And then I believe this was as of today, the Patriots have indicated that they will be moving on from Bill Belichick, which is that that's up there with like Nick Saban retiring, where I'm like, God, what is I mean, everyone's been talking about it, but like and it's he's not retiring. That's the thing, is it was a mutual parting, and Bill has expressed he still wants to coach. But yeah, that's the coaches that have happened in the past week, and I'm just actually past like 3 days. It's been wild in the news. I'm looking forward to this offseason because that's going to provide a lot of opportunity. We're going to have a lot of time to talk about coach hirings, um, because these are just the head coaches that are available. I feel like we're gonna have a lot of talks about who goes where.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on right now, and it will probably ramp up a little bit, but we'll see. Depends on how things play out in the playoffs.
Yeah, speaking
But
of, let's get into that week 18 coverage, because oh boy, was it not just coaching that happened in the past week. There only a few games that didn't really matter.
so starting off with the Steelers and Ravens, the only reason why it was a close game was because Ravens had second strings out. It was a ready game from what I've seen. There was a lot of fumbling on both sides, so that was nothing that they could control. But the Steelers are in the playoffs because of certain things happening. Without Watt, they are going to get dropped from the playoffs really hard because Watt is literally carrying that team. Rudolph is not good. I don't care what people say about Rudolph. Rudolph has had like maybe a couple good games lately. It's a insanity run, as they would say. He's not a starter. He's a good backup. He's not a starter though. Texans and Colts. Texans won that one. Happy for them because, well, I mean, they're back in the playoffs. They won the division because Jacksonville lost. Stroud had another great day. It's good to see that. Colts, they did better than expected this year, which means that they're going to be good next year. I would hope and be consistent with Richardson coming back. I would hope that he would, bring that team to a new level. Taylor was back. He had a good game. Browns and Bengals. We have the five, fifth starting QB for the Browns. Driscoll apparently is around. I mean, didn't do great. Yeah, I mean, the Bengals won. For the first time in NFL history, a division has all had winning records, and that's the AFC North. Rightfully so, because that division is always really tough to win in.
It's not the first time. It's the first time everyone's finished over 500 since 1935, which is a very long time.
Yeah.
Uh,
I guess since the merger
yeah, since
specifically,
the
but
merger, because they were playing a lot less games, much less games back then. So, uh, it also was a division that featured the Packers, Lions. Bears and Cardinals, actually. The leader of that division was the Lions, and they made it to, I believe, the NFL championship that year. I think they won
Mhm.
it. They might have won it that year too. That was,
Vikings and Lions. I thought Minnesota was going to at least win one of the games against the Lions. That didn't happen, apparently. Literally everybody on the Lions performed well today, or not today, but that day. Laporta was injured during the game, I think.
Mhm.
I heard he was injured, but
He's injured in day to day, so he may play in the playoffs, but
yeah.
they're not sure yet. So,
Well, at least it's day to day and not like it's definitive. So it could be a lot worse. Jaguars and Titans. This is a really disappointing year for the Jaguars. They started 8-3 with the aspiration of clinching that first seed, and now they're eliminated from the playoffs. They didn't rest Lawrence. Something
I
on the defense happened.
no, dude, I watched them play the Titans. The coaching was bad. They were so many opportunities to come back in that game, and they sort of did come back. They made it close at the end, but they went into the second half down 15, and they kept turning it over on downs. Horrible play calls. They threw two on, it was like third and 15, third and 11, and they threw back-to-back drag routes. That's not going to get you a first down. The receivers were dropping balls. There were bad throws. I think there's a coaching, I think there's a disconnect, and I don't think Doug Peterson is a bad coach, but Jacksonville, yeah, I think either needs to move on from Doug Peterson, or they need to kind of rebuild the roster in his image. Um, I think the easier thing to do there is move on from Peterson, but something is not working with that mix, especially between Lawrence and Peterson. And I think you kind of just need to bite the bullet and kind of, like, as much as I hate like 1 or 2 year and then duns, even if they didn't do horrible or even if they weren't great. It's not really working. And unless they bring in like a new OC, and let him take the reins, I think the issues in Jacksonville right now are a coaching thing. How else do you explain such a collapse like that?
Moving on from that game, we have the Jets and Patriots. You would think a snow game would revive Belichick's like ability to win games. That didn't happen. Somehow the Jets dominated that game. It
Well,
wasn't it wasn't a great score, but it was like, yeah, they basically dominated them for most of that game. Yeah, nothing important besides the fact that Belichick has ended his first season with the most losses in it. But yeah,
and what the Jets? I don't remember how many games, but they snapped their losing streak against the Patriots. I remember it was a long one. I don't remember how long, but
it was long enough.
long enough to where someone was like, "Hey, we did a thing."
We did a thing. Falcons and Saints. Saints stomped all over them. Falcons had no answers for that offense for some reason. It
It
was also
was
incompetence.
it was actually what, tied at halftime.
It was tied at halftime, but yeah, during the second half, it was Slaughterfest though, because
Ritter
they could
played
not stop him.
Ritter played so poorly in that second. It was not. I don't even think it wasn't even just the Saints offense. I think the defense was a large part of that
Yeah.
win too. Some controversy around the end of the game. Well, Arthur Smith yelled at Dennis Allen because the Saints scored a touchdown up 24 with only a couple minutes left, and it's basically came out and been the stories apparently that Dennis Allen was like, I had no idea. Apparently, it was
Yeah.
Jameis Winston, backup Jameis Winston, who was like, "We're gonna get Jamal Williams a touchdown." I think it's funny. Uh, Falcons did not find it funny, but you know, they're kind of the butt of the joke at this point anyway, so who cares? Game didn't really matter though because the Buccaneers went out and won
against
uh
Carolina.
9-0.
The
Ugh.
Panthers haven't scored since last year.
You
I mean, it's technically right though. They haven't
no
scored and
going into the week, no one had scored since last year.
no, I'm talking about the end of the game, dum dum. I'm not
I
talking
know,
about going
but
into
it
the year.
just meaning that they're the only that they went 1 week without scoring is what you're saying.
Yes, that's basically what I'm saying. They went 1 week without scoring,
Yeah, and
and it was a bad game. They could have had like a. I saw that what was it? I think it was Chark fumbled one of the like quote unquote touchdown passes from Young. He fumbled it into the end zone and it became a touchback for the Bucks. And then there was something earlier in that game where the Panthers could have like definitely won that game, but they just kept shooting themselves in the foot.
the Chark fumble, I will admit, because it was Antoine Winfield who actually has done that at least one other time earlier this season, if you remember, when the Bucks played the Falcons, and Desmond Ritter had a scramble out to the left. Antoine Winfield was the one who chased him down and punched the ball out through the end zone. He's kind of just a hustle player. It's cool to watch.
Yeah, he's
Still,
kind of good.
Baker came out after the game in his interview and said that what was his quote? He's like, I don't know how Pro Bowl voting works, but he's I think he said he's the best safety in the NFL. Obviously, a little biased,
He's pretty good though. Winfield is pretty good. I've seen him play for years, and it's like, yeah, he knows what he's doing.
which isn't surprising. Their offense has been struggling in the past couple of weeks. Panthers kind of have a pretty good defense, just no offense. So I'm not super surprised. It's just kind of a lackluster way for the Buccaneers to win their third straight division title. You did it anyways. You made the playoffs.
Bears and Packers. Can't say I'm surprised, because the Packers own the Bears. That's just a given. I don't expect anything different. Although I will say Jordan Love has been doing better as in like he's progressed in the last few weeks. I don't think he's like really, really good, but he's definitely been good lately, and I want to see him develop. I don't want him to be like the next Favre and Rodgers, though. We don't need another 20 years of insufferability from Green Bay. But there was definitely a time where I was like, Love is not going to be a great quarterback. So he's proven me wrong, especially in recent memory. But we'll see how that translates to the playoffs. Broncos and Raiders, basically a nothing game, nothing really to play for at this point. Raiders
Right.
won. Eagles and Giants. Eagles, you are so incompetent, and I have no
Oh,
idea what's going on. Actually, I do know what's going on. Your inability to coach and to use your players correctly has completely destroyed this team. The fact that they hired Matt Patricia as a DC is a sign that they are going to lose their first playoff game, like immediately. I'm going to say this right now. Eagles are losing to the Bucks. Um, Giants did pretty decently for what they had. Obviously, they're not a great team, but they did what they needed to do to win that game. Eagles are now without Hurts, or at least not without Hurts. Hurts broke his finger. AJ Brown actually went down with a knee injury. So that just further solidifies that the Eagles are doomed to fall out of the playoffs this year. Calling it a collapse is being nice. This is an utter catastrophe.
it's
I thought the Seahawks collapse was bad. No, the Eagles this year were just worse, just
Seahawks.
in general.
They
Or
were
not Seahawks, Jaguars. I thought the
oh, okay.
Jaguars collapse was bad. No, Eagles was so much worse.
We're gonna
I
talk about
don't
a poor end to the season though. I mean, yes, Jags choked it as much as they could. Eagles were kind of safe after their hot start. But as far as teams that undeservedly got where they were, despite how poorly they've played the past few weeks, how about them Chiefs, man? 13-12 win over the Chargers. Sure, you
They were
weren't playing.
resting their starters.
They
Yeah,
weren't resting all their starters.
not
Uh,
all of them, but they were resting most of them.
Chris Jones needed a sack turn, was it like 1.5 million, and it took him until like the second half, which was like just like okay, but then you look at the fact that they're playing the Chargers, who have maybe one of the worst interior defensive lines that I've ever seen, and Easton Stick. I know they're playing their backups, and still the Chargers. Come on, I'm concerned for them, but yeah, we'll send their backups, so I guess there's not much to really dissect from the game. You got that Seahawks. Yeah, I kind of feel bad because I was sitting watching Red Zone and the Seahawks were playing and they were like it was a close game with the Cardinals. I thought the Cardinals were actually gonna win that game for a second. I was like, damn, Seahawks were like well, they were losing. I was like, oh no, you're gonna lose your spot. But then obviously with how scenarios worked, they need the Packers to lose. And the Packers actually won that game with a couple minutes left. And the Seahawks, it just felt so bad to watch the Packers win that game, and you just jump over to the Seahawks game, and they're just like, well, we're down 7 with nothing to play for except pride at this point. And then they drove down and actually scored a touchdown, got the 2-point conversion that actually put them ahead and won them the game. Kind of tough because it's just like you won that game for nothing essentially, but team still fought to the end. So it's very honorable. And uh, especially when you think about it, that's Pete Carroll's last game as a head coach. So
Rams and Niners. I'm surprised that the Niners didn't pull off a victory. Because I mean, I know they're playing their backups and everything, but like you would think that the Niners would be able to win that game because weren't they ahead for a while, like for most of
they
that game?
they were also up, I think, 13-20, and the Rams went down and also scored a touchdown, got a 2-point conversion because they were like, screw it. We can't miss the playoffs. Yeah. Mm, I was gonna say Carson Wentz proved that he's the better ginger, but I don't know that we can really say that. Uh,
All right.
Lucas set 2 rookie records: the rookie reception record and the rookie receiving yards record. Mc, uh, McVay kept him in to get those because, I mean, honestly, he kind of deserves those records, even though he got the extra game and stuff, and he had to take almost half of that game. With the way he's played, I think he kind of deserves those. So,
No,
he's a top 5 receiver this year. So as a rookie, I think he kind of earned those records. But
I'm happy for him. I do hope to see him develop into like this like really great wide receiver that's going to be talked about for years to come. Like that's what I'm hoping for him. Going to the Cowboys and Commanders. Congratulations, Cowboys. You beat up on a really, really, really bad secondary. That's all that happened.
just a bad team in general.
Like there's not much to play for Washington at this point. So like, congrats, you beat up a really bad team on the road. We got a road win though.
like yeah, even though that's the case, that game was kind of scary for a little bit for the Cowboys. They
Yeah,
what was it like first
it took them a bit.
half or so that they were like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
And I would
first
I
half
would
was
I would
something else.
I would have laughed if they lost because
I would have too.
it just would have been funny. But
Lamb
I
again
don't
had
know.
a really great game. I think Lamb is definitely top three. I don't think he's number one though.
Uh
So
yeah, if I was to rank top 3, Tyreek, even with his injuries. Two, CD. I think he earns number two. 'Cause damn. And three, Puka, because
Yeah. I
who
mean,
you gonna
that's a fair ranking. It's fair.
yeah. If things had progressed how they had, it could have been AJ Brown. He slowed down. Justin Jefferson had injuries. Jamar Chase started slow and lost his star quarterback. And um, Devontae still doesn't have a good quarterback throwing him the ball. It kind of was just left open. And Cooper Cup was injured for part of the year, so it was kind of just left open for those three, and they, took their opportunities and ran with it. So people were complaining that it's like, man, since the Jaguars lost, the the Bills Dolphins game doesn't hold as much as there's not as much on the line for the Bills because they're in the playoffs regardless. But
Yeah, but they want that title.
they do.
They wanted that title, and they got it.
I will admit, because I think you mentioned this before last week, and I actually do think that this was the smartest thing, was as for the Dolphins, a loss was the best thing for them because it was either going to be, with how the games worked out, either Dolphins at two playing the Bills again,
Hmm.
which was just
Or
yeah, didn't think that was a great matchup, or you lose and you went to the Chiefs.
Chiefs have been struggling. They have a
Chiefs have
better
been
chance against the Chiefs than they do the Bills, which is weird to say because the Bills have been like it's
kind of.
very highly dependent on Allen for the Bills' success.
I would say it's more dependent on their run game. Their run game has actually been the thing that's kind of been their ride or die. So
Hmm.
if they don't get that going, it doesn't seem like they do great. When they rely on
Yeah.
Josh Allen, like like the issue was like early in this game or against the Patriots, they kind of just end up with a lot of turnovers. Once they start to lean on the run game, they tend to do better. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how that works out. That was week 18 and the final week of the regular season. And we'll go
Why
on
is it always going away so fast? Now we get the playoffs, but it's just gone in the blink of an eye.
with all of those results from last week. The way that has shaken out has, ironically, a lot of people praising the NFL scriptwriters for doing such a good job because the storylines for the playoffs in this wildcard round are there's some pretty good ones. Uh, 4 and 5 seed in the AFC, Texans Browns. Could have had Deshaun Watson coming home for a playoff game. Maybe it's good that he wasn't.
I'm
Maybe
glad he's not in there.
maybe it'll be good that maybe he should just not
How
go to
about
games.
I kind of view it as the teams that suffered from the Deshaun Watson trade. I wouldn't be surprised if he got like they sign him out of a contract or whatever it is. Like they just cut him basically.
I still think it's an interesting game. You got the old Joe Flacco versus the young CJ Stroud. It's an interesting matchup. Um,
Who do you have?
I am going with the Browns. I'm not
Yeah.
super confident with either because, rookie quarterbacks don't tend to do well. And I think the Browns being like mostly backups isn't going to really work for them. Um, I think the Browns have a better chance of winning this one. I could see it being close. I could definitely see the Texans winning. I just don't think I think the Texans are too young.
I did say the Browns as well. I also agree with how close it could be because young talent versus veteran quarterback on both sides. I think Flacco does have the advantage. He is currently undefeated in the wild card round, so he has that going for him.
No, no.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, I love both teams. Uh, Browns without Deshaun Watson specifically. I like the storyline a little bit, but unfortunately, I don't think the Texans can pull it off. If they do, I'm happy. It's just I think the Browns have a slight leverage with that. It's because they still have a lot of that talent. They just, they rested their starters. They have Joe Flacco who's currently on fire for the most part. So if he can do what he did, but minus all the picks, I think he will be fine. So
Yeah.
that's my take.
Um, yeah. Then you got uh the probably best narrative out of the AFC side, which is the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Tyreek is returning home. Uh a lot of jokes about who the winner gets to keep Tyreek Hill, and those make me giggle. It is going to be one of the coldest playoff games uh from the forecast, as we can tell. Um yeah, it's gonna be around zero. I've seen negatives to like up to 9 degrees, but it's gonna be cold. Major home field advantage for the Chiefs.
Yep.
I'm still choosing the Dolphins though.
Interesting because I also chose the Dolphins, not in the sense that, oh, the Chiefs are really, really bad, that they don't deserve to go any farther or whatever it is. I just don't trust the Chiefs lately. They haven't been consistent on offense, and everyone's like, "But Mahomes is the GOAT. He can make something out of nothing." I'm like, "Yes, but how long is that gonna last?" Because like, sure, you've won games, but barely convincingly. Not even convincingly at all. Like you barely won some of these games so far this year. It's like you're lucky that you haven't lost more games because of your incompetence at wide receivers. But I just I don't see the Chiefs winning in some aspects, but I also see them winning in others. Home field advantage will be a huge factor in this game, and I think the Chiefs do win in most situations. It's just I'm rooting for the Dolphins because I trust the Dolphins to make a better push than the Chiefs this year.
Yeah, it's the scary thing with the Chiefs is always their uh or has been this year is the defense. Their defense is really good. I feel like the Dolphins have seen it already this year in Germany. I think staying a little closer to home, even though it's literally a home game for the Chiefs. You get Tyreek out there, use their weapons. It's just it's hard with the Dolphins being such a warm team, like a warm place team. It's hard to confidently say that they're gonna win in such cold temperatures. Uh, but I think I think their defense will do enough to keep them in it, or to keep them ahead, and their offense just needs to not do nothing and not choke away a game. Because I think that's kind of with how the Chiefs offense has been playing, I think it's kind of just the Dolphins game to lose. So I'm going with the Dolphins. Yeah, it's hard. I feel like it's so hard looking at the AFC because I feel like so many of these teams, I'm like, none of these teams are gonna go far, but somebody does. Somebody has to go far. So, and then the last game out of the AFC for the super wild card weekend, Bills Steelers. Um, this one might be closer than expected. Yeah, I'm still having. I'm picking Bills to win just because without T.J. Watt, the Steelers defense is not going to be as dominant, and I think Josh Allen will be able to pick that apart a little bit better. Bills defense has been playing well. Like you mentioned before, Rudolph is not a good quarterback. He's a solid backup and probably the best quarterback they have on roster. Even if he is, I think Steelers still might put up more points than they've been putting up most of the year. But I think the Bills pull this one out.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Bills as well. I don't trust the Steelers offense or defense now in any situation. And given that Buffalo has the home field advantage, I heard it's supposed to snow, I think. I could be wrong. I could have seen that wrong. It's supposed to snow in Buffalo. So that's like prime Buffalo Bills, like playoff game right there where it snows and everything. So I think the Bills will pull off this victory. I also don't think it will be a close game. It's either the Steelers somehow win this by a miracle or the Steelers are going to get absolutely blown out. There's no in between. Every time the Steelers go in the offense, go in the playoffs, they're like, oh, the Steelers are either going to win or keep it really close. They get blown out every stinking year. Happened in 2020 against the Browns. It happened against the Chiefs in 2021, or yeah, 2021. Did they make the playoffs last year? I don't remember them being in the
No.
playoffs. They were not in the playoffs last year. Point still being, the last few years they have been in the playoffs and they've just been absolutely just backhanded out of the playoffs because they just aren't ready for it. They have no like solid core, in my opinion. The only solid core they have is TJ Watt and George Pickens. I do trust Najee Harris though. Najee Harris is really good. I think Warren is a great backup. But other than that, the rest of the team just falls flat. I don't think the rest of that roster is going to do well.
Steelers just, yeah. Steelers have a good defense. I think this is probably, especially if you take away injuries, probably the best defense they've had in the past couple of years. Um, Definitely the worst offense they've had in the past couple of years as well. But Rudolph has gotten some guys to actually, score points, get some yards. So we know what you're going with on this one. Bucks Eagles. You said you were basically going with the Bucks. You don't think the Eagles are going to win a
Yeah,
game.
no, I don't think the Eagles will win a game. With that incompetence on coaching and the ineffectiveness of their players being used correctly, I don't think they will win.
I understand the distrust of the Eagles, but just looking at this game, the only thing I see that the Buccaneers have is home field advantage. Uh, the Eagles, despite how the past 6 weeks went, Eagles have better coaching, better quarterback, better O line. Maybe not better receivers, but better running back, better defense. It's just they kind of need to pull, like, yeah, they finished really poorly, and I think that is going to affect how they play in the playoffs. But playoffs are still different than the regular season, and I think the Bucks kind of just they got what they wanted or what they were aiming for. Nobody really gave them. A lot of teams wrote them, or a lot of people wrote them off as a team that were going to be like a bottom five team at the beginning of the year. Me being one of them because I did not expect Baker to do well, but he has, and I'm so glad because I love watching him play. Eagles are the better team. They just need to get their shit together, and it's like it's hard to say that they will. And I completely understand you not trusting that they will. So I'm going with Eagles. Uh,
Okay.
I won't be surprised if the Eagles struggle continues and if they get bounced in the first round. Go on to probably the best storyline of the playoffs, which is Matthew Stafford coming home against his old team in the first home game hosted at Ford Field. And it is just going to be it'll be an emotional game. Um I think the Lions fan base has grown so much over the past couple of years, and I think they're gonna go nuts. Uh, I think they're gonna have a really big home field advantage. Um, there's been a lot of talk about the Rams being a hot team. My lack of jumping on that train. Rams have struggled to close games. I think Lions are a really good team when it comes to closing games. Uh, Lions have looked really good the past couple of weeks as well. Only lost the past couple of weeks coming to the Cowboys when the Cowboys were home, went undefeated at home. I went with the Lions. If it wasn't obvious with my points, I think Matthew Stafford is going to go out and play his heart out, but I just think the Lions are a better team. Rams offense might have a bit of a field day against that defense. Anything beyond the D line is kind of a struggle for the Lions, but I'm sticking with the Lions on this one.
And I will as well. I'm gonna stick with the Lions. Rams are good with Stafford and everybody. Nakua, Cup, got a bunch of other players. But Detroit has a lot of momentum going for them that I think it cannot be stopped. And in I want the Lions to go far this year. I don't know if they'll get to the Super Bowl, but I want them to go far so that like they have more like I don't know. They have a lot of passion. They do. I'm just saying that if they don't go far this year, next year they definitely I think they will. If they have all their pieces still together. And I want them to do well this year. If they go to the Super Bowl and win it, that's like a dream come true for all those fans. Yeah. I just take it one week at a time. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think they will win against the Rams.
we have no judgment as to how they do in the playoffs because they haven't been in like I don't think they've been any time in the past decade, have they? Um, they haven't won.
Maybe when Stafford was there, when they beat the Cowboys, I think. Did
No,
they
well,
beat
that
the
was the thing I was
Cowboys?
going to get to.
Oh,
They haven't won a playoff game, and I think 30 years. So not when Matthew Stafford was there. Last time they were in the playoffs, they were bounced right away, and
yeah.
I don't think it was within the last 10 years. And they're also, it's like you don't know how they're going to play because we haven't seen them in the playoffs in forever. So we don't know if they're any good in the playoffs. We haven't seen Dan Campbell in the playoffs. So we don't know like any of that. Like you got to be pretty happy with what you've done already this year. And yes, they're going to want to go for more. But when you're going against teams like the 49ers who are like, yeah, 49ers are at a point where it's like, yeah, the one seed, whatever, we're going for the Super Bowl. Anything less is a disappointment. Same thing with like Cowboys and Eagles. They don't really care about the other accomplishments. They're not making big accomplishments. I mean, I think Cowboys, you know, making it past the divisional round might be a milestone for them, but they should be happy with their season if even if they
Yep.
get bounced in the first round. So it's hard to tell who's playing for more.
I mean,
Uh,
I want success for that city. So,
yeah, just we all know that in order for the Lions to win, the Pistons need to lose. So this would be the 2 and the 7 seed on the NFC side, which is the Cowboys and the Packers. I actually really enjoy this rivalry. I feel like the NFC East and the NFC Packers, Cowboys, Seahawks, and 49ers in the playoffs all really just hate each other. Eagles are in there sometimes, but those those four Cowboys, Packers, Cowboys, 49ers, Packers, Seahawks, Cowboys, Seahawks, 49ers, Seahawks. It's like I'll hate each other.
well, I mean,
It's
with so many disappointments coming from each side, I mean, that's what happens. So,
yeah, but
yeah.
this is mm, everything about this game tells me that the Cowboys should win.
In every logistical standpoint, the Cowboys should win this game.
Except
However,
it's
however,
Mike McCarthy, and they have won one playoff game in the past 3 years, 4 years. They didn't even make it in 2020. Yeah, three definitely
Oh,
definitely last 3 years because it was they won one last year against the Buccaneers, who shouldn't have made it. Then got bounced by the 49ers. Year before, got bounced by the 49ers in the wild card. And then the year before they didn't make it. They've not been good in the playoffs. Admittedly,
and yeah.
they've been very good at home this year. And they are at home, which is they're in a setup where if they can ride off of that home momentum, um, they could ride that all the way to the championship, regardless of who they play. I don't know if they're gonna be able to actually win a playoff game with Mike McCarthy against the Packers.
I never trusted Mike McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers carried his career for the most of it. And obviously the Packers coming into the playoffs is a huge shocker for most people. And if you know the history between the Packers and the Cowboys, the Packers like to play spoiler a lot for the Cowboys, where the Packers somehow win against the Cowboys most of the times that they're in the playoffs together. And I think the last time they were facing off in the playoffs, Rodgers was the quarterback. And I don't know, I think it was like 2016 that happened where Packers beat them. I don't remember the last time they played each other, but still, Packers have always been like, it doesn't matter who is there. It's just,
They
uh,
Yeah, they usually do get the Packers usually do get the better of the Cowboys in the playoffs, which is why it's so iffy. But I'll let you make your pick first.
every, like I said, everyone who has a good logistical standpoint for football, they would say the Cowboys would win. And I would say the Cowboys would win. However, there's something about the Packers this year where it's like they can't like they won't die. They keep they keep thriving. Like no matter how many times you beat them over the head, they just get back up and they're like, okay, we're in the playoffs now. So it's like I thought Packers were like bottom feeder this year. I thought they were gonna be. And then somehow they pull all these wins out of their butts. And I'm it's like there's I don't get it. Like the Packers, they're just they're playing spoiler this year again. And there's something about those Packers. I don't know what it is. If anything, I think the Packers will win this year. Um, they'll win against the Cowboys. They'll play spoiler, but whoever they play later on, they'll get absolutely clapped by.
Although if they win, they're playing the 49ers, so and they don't have a good track
That's my
record.
point.
Yeah.
That's my point. It's like regardless if they beat them or not, they're gonna get clapped by the 49ers specifically. Like I don't know how you can't avoid them. They're inevitable.
Yeah.
So
Packers are like, yeah, we beat our rival. We're we're gonna go to the Super Bowl. Uh it's the
about
team we
that.
haven't beaten in the playoffs for like a decade.
Yeah, Packers cannot win against the Niners. And the Cowboys can't beat the Packers. And the Cowboys
Cowboys
can't
can't
beat
beat
the
the
Niners.
Niners. It's just Cowboys are
It's
like,
it's a it's not a loop. It's just they get blocked off by the Niners. But the Niners can't for some reason beat the Rams sometimes in the playoffs. I mean, you look at 2021, you thought the Niners are gonna win, but nah, Rams had them locked down. But I'm excited to see this year. Um, I'm hoping what I predict will happen, obviously. But if there's a couple surprises, like for example, the Browns and Texas game, like if something happens there, then I'm like, okay, cool. But then, for example, like if anything happens between the Packers and Cowboys, one, I wouldn't be surprised because any situation given in that game is like, okay, well, that was a given to begin with. Like if the Packers win, it's like, oh, because the Packers own the Cowboys. If the Cowboys win, it's like, oh, because they're the better team. So there's a lot of those. So I'm excited. This should be good playoffs.
It'll be very interesting. I'm excited to come back at this point next week and recap this because there's there's a lot of interesting games, and I think um even with how things work out, I think it's just yeah, I think the playoffs are going to be interesting just the rest of the season. I don't think we're going to really have a boring game. I think your two boring games will be like maybe Bills Steelers and maybe Bucks Eagles. After that, it's like
It's pretty exciting.
anything after that is like it's really exciting. It's just gonna have exciting football. It's getting spicy. We're getting
Yep.
to the end, and then
We are
we'll have to.
we're getting to the end of the season, so
Then we got off season.
hopefully for a good end of the season as well. But
Yeah,
but I think that concludes this episode because playoffs are just around the corner and we gotta get ready for them mentally. So yeah, well, thank you all for joining us for this episode. We'll be back covering the wild card weekend. Um, so yeah, thanks for joining us. Bye.
goodbye.